The Casey Stoney era has begun with a 1-1 draw versus China. The People's Republic of China, what does it mean? Well, let's talk about it. Alright guys, 1-1 Casey Stoney's debut for the Canadian women's national team, the XNT. You know, the Pinitar Cup for me is just, what am I going to learn from these three games? And I think there are lessons learned everywhere. I almost came into this with some overarching, like, 2-year conversations and then also this tournament conversations. So I'm almost curious to see how we go. But 1-1 is the score. It ends. Canada started off well. Julia Grosso scoring in the 15th minute, but then China equalizes in the 58th minute. Let's talk a little bit about what we saw, what stood out to us, our players of the games. The first thing was all acknowledge the opposition, guys. People's Republic of China. We haven't played China in a while now. This is the first time in a very long time that we haven't beaten them, Canada that is. So looking at them, this has been interesting. They made the game feisty in the second half. They adjusted as well. The 4-4-2 that Canada played was a little bit tight, but China took away space, were a little feisty. Set pieces, they were doing something that I feel that Canada should have been doing more of, and maybe it's something they start to incorporate more of, which is that floating player at the top of the box was always dangerous for them and caused Canada problems. But China, I think, is a good prelude to what they'll face with Mexico. Chinese Taipei will come next for Canada, I believe. But let's kind of go through this. So starting 11 looked like a 4-4-2. I thought it would have been a 4-4-2 diamond or a 4-2-2-2. But it was a 4-4-2, which had good things, but also had areas where I think they could have improved on. In goal, you had Sabrina D'Angelo, who, again, because of city bias, she can do nothing wrong. She can do no wrong in my eyes. Gabby Carl, Vanessa Gilles, Shalene Zadorsky, Ashley Lawrence, with Janine Sonis. I'm going to call her Becky like for a month, so I do apologize in advance. Julia Grosso, the goal scorer. Emma Regan, Marie-Alie Du, Evelyn Vienne, and Nichelle Prince. So that was more of a 4-4-2 with Sonis and Ali Du outside, with Regan sitting more so in your deep destroyer role as your CDM, which allowed a player like Julia Grosso to move forward and go through. I think you saw a lot of good things throughout this game. Ali Du had a good first half, and I think was active throughout. Gabby Carl showing her ability to spray passes around, I think was great. Vienne and Prince aren't necessarily the best pairing. I know the broadcast hasn't mentioned it, but they're not the best pairing because they both are similar. You need another player who can, if you're going to play Vienne and or Prince, you'd almost be better suited putting one of them out wide and putting a 9 up top. And if you're not going to do that, you would have been better off, honestly, if you had put, say, Ali Du up top and had her play more into that 10 role than Nichelle Prince, who, it was Nichelle Prince's birthday on this game, so happy birthday, Nichelle. And this is a terrible segue to go to Nichelle Prince. I don't know. It's just one game with this coach. But I don't know if Nichelle Prince will be in the 27 World Cup. Maybe there's a combination of at 9s that works for this team. But it does bring up the point of like the 95s. Like, how many of them can they keep, you think, into that next round when you have this latest U20 cycle knocking on the door, right? When you have these U17s that are starting to creep up, even I jokingly say the lost generation, but the U20s, right? The U20s of the Awujo Smith, and then Jade Rose era, right? You still have players like Nikayla Small on that side, right? Maya Jones even is just out. Yeah, Maya Jones is one of those. So there is going to be a transition with the squad. And so we saw some debuts. We saw Wickenheiser get her debut. You saw Ella Ati get her debut. You saw players, and then you have Nia Rose, who's still on the bench. Samantha Chang got some time here as well. I am very much curious to see who can actually stay and how many positions are we looking at that can be transitions are up for grabs, literally. For a mostly rotated squad, not really disappointed in the result. Would I have loved to win, of course, but it's a 1-1 draw. Defending, you saw with new faces playing in a new system, trying to be comfortable with each other. They were getting sucked in a lot, which left a lot of space for that player who would be floating at the top of the box for China PR. And they got some great opportunities on net. But let's talk about the goal. Canada scores. Gabby Carl gets the ball, sends a long ball off for Julia Grosso, who is on sides thanks to deeper playing of Vienne and Prince. She gets in. You have Vienne coming in. Nichelle's coming up behind. So those are our two options. She puts a shot on frame and she scores. I think that's a big goal for Julia Grosso, just to get her moving. I think her further up the pitch is something that a lot of people have spoken about. Her getting up on the pitch allows her to play more of a creative and an offensive game than her having to sit back. And I think this opens the door for the conversation with Emma Regan, which is that CDM role, I think, is very up for grabs, especially without Quinn here. One would assume that Quinn, if they're healthy, they can come in and they contribute. However, if this team can find other CDM options that allow to let your midfielders move up the pitch and see a lot of different options, it really does open it up, which is why I think with Regan, even with the Samantha Chang, I'm curious to see if they can carve out enough to say, hey, we deserve shells because we're comfortable enough in these roles and these spaces. Grosso, offensively, the problem with Grosso, I think, and it's not necessarily a problem, but there are so many players fighting for that space, right? I don't know if the 4-4-2 is the best usage of the players that you have. Now, mind you, it's because you don't have Jade Rose healthy, you don't have Kadisha Buchanan healthy. If this is a back three, then you're probably looking at a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1 type of a set. I think that allows you to play a lot more freely. But Grosso's in a logjam in terms of forward midfield, like those attacking midfielders, because I think right now we're looking at Olivia Smith as a 9, which is fine. You're also looking at Addie Du as a 10. If Fleming gets into this, I think you see Fleming as a 10. Grosso is just in this situation where I think numbers for Grosso might impact the opportunity she gets, because I think the thing that'll really release the midfield is having that solid CDM, and Ujo being available is a thing. Having a player like Regan there, Regan will do wonders, and then Quinn. From a midfield standpoint, Grosso, I think, is curious to watch, as well as Nichelle Prince, because I think there are 9s that will come. And even in Annabelle Chukwu, I think, will eventually come. This makes me very curious to see what happens with those. But for a team that was experimenting, we got to see a lot of what we wanted, right? We got to see players get opportunities. We saw different combinations of players, which it looked a little disjointed at times. There are probably 2 free kicks, a free kick and a penalty that Canada should have received, but they didn't. And that's all right. Learn to fight through the adversity. You got to see some of these players play through adversity, which was great. Good for them. Literacy had a good showing, I feel. One drawback of this game, I'd say, is they got caught off sides very often. Which means, to me, and this is a very oversimplification of it, know where your last line is. If you are leading the line, know where the 10s are. Know where your center backs are. But their goal was scored by not trying to go after their 9s. Canada, so it wasn't trying to go a long ball to their forwards, it was out wide. So maybe if you're going to try to play that type of a game, maybe it's playing within that space and that pace that opens the door up for you, right? Grosser coming down the wing on the ball from Carl leads to your first goal. If you're going to play within that space, maybe that's looking for, and even Lawrence and Alidu were doing that well, where it was a conversation of, okay, you got the ball out there. I think also I would have liked to see them a bit more decisive. I would have liked to see them a little bit more greedy with their shot selection. There was a lot of crosses that were going in, and at some point it was just like, okay, at some point someone just let one rip. Would have been nice. Now, China did a good job of taking space away, and give them credit for that. But I think in these next couple of games, you're going to need players who want to put some shots on frame. Goalkeeping, didn't find too much wrong. Sabrina D'Angelo had a good save at the end of the game. The goal can't really falter. It's off a rebound, she gets set. The shooter puts it where she can't get it. Would you want her to react a little bit faster? But that's granted, that would be amazing anticipation. So I think can't really falter there. Defensive marking was a little bit off. I think also in the center backs, not that I think Shalina is great and has had a great career for Canada and for clubs, but you see the lack of foot speed there, and especially in the transition, there's times where it's just okay, one is just going to go back and defend and let someone with more pace coming through try to defend. I think they miss having a Jade Rose in this game. Even a Kadisha they miss having the pace at center back that can snuff out counterattacks. There was a few unnerving situations which really left it tough to kind of see. So not disappointed per se, but hey, you get 3 friendlies here in this window. And so you don't have Fleming in the midfield. I think Reagan did the best out of all the players to me. She stood out the most, and she's a player who I think has done so much that I don't think you can have another roster without her on it. So I think she had a very good showing in her game and showed her versatility very well. You could almost see her being a player similar. I don't think you can be as much as Janine Sonis, but being able to play in the CDM, then sit back to right back. Gabby Carl has that flexibility and that versatility overall. So I think Reagan did a very good job for herself in showing what she could do. And I'm very much excited to see now what that means to the other positions. Can any other player show that they deserve to have another look? We'll have to wait and see, unfortunately. But this is the beauty of this game. You get to evaluate players. We have our evaluations, but then also the coaches will have theirs as well. So we sit back and we watch and we see what comes next. And I am very much excited to see it. But if you guys watch the games, who was your player of the match for Canada? Let me know in the comments below. Who stood out to you? Who are you excited to see in their next few games? Let us know in the comments below as well. And as always, I'm gonna stop talking right here.